Thank you, Joe.
Well, thank you. This is going to be more of a philosophy. I am not an expert in any way. I'll give you my description of what I think generative AI is and how that mindset of mine I hope to communicate to my students, because then you become a really in tuned and ethical user of the technology. So, it's changing. The world has changed. It's done, right? This is the homework apocalypse. We've talked about the homework apocalypse since Google came around, right? And we saw a kind of decrease in the ability of a lot of those, the skills that the students were getting didn't really match the assessment scores. Something was amiss, right? And it's really been hard to cheat proof in the modern internet age. Now, woo! With this technology, it's, I dare say, almost impossible if we continue to go about the traditional ways of assigning assessments and then grading assessments. So the change is here, right? So what we need to do is be able to figure out ways that we can leverage this technology, that we can incorporate a new type of skill set into our students, because that is the future. There's several studies. I mean, I guess the one that kind of set with me is we think of, the steam engine, the Industrial Revolution, and how much that changed. Most historians give that of about a 20% increase in worker productivity. In just the limited time we've had these large language models like ChatGPT, they've tested the increase in productivity across several different types of employees and different skill sets, and we noticed an increase in productivity at the low end of 20% all the way to 80%, right? So using this tool is going to be vital, and harnessing its ability is going to be important for our students to continue to succeed in this new frontier that we're sending our students out into. So it's going to be as fundamental as just our basic computer literacy, right? It's a challenge. And what I think about it is the way we're going to have to address this is just, in my philosophy, is embracing this and leveraging it, and then raising the bar and our expectations of our students in this new world. First off, let's just look at what it is. So, generative AI, if you haven't played with it. That's the best way of learning its capabilities, is just to go in it and treat it as a sandbox, right? And see what you can get out. The more you play with it, the more you learn of its capabilities, and it helps you kind of design it to the outputs that would be more conducive to your means. There's different ones. The most popular is ChatGPT. I think it's helpful for me, and I think it's helpful to communicate to my students this base level understanding of how the technology works. And then it works very similar to kind of that automatic text reply that you have in your iPhone, right? So the system essentially works at a very lay level as predicting the next probable word that follows in that structure, right? And when you have that mindset, now you no longer anthropomorphize it as an expert, right? It's just predicting the next token, the next word that best fits in the sequence. It knows nothing. There's no there. It's just very good on that algorithm at putting out very impressive and convincing outputs, right? So if they know that, right, then hopefully they come into the mindset that, I need expertise in order to use this to my advantage. We need experts, right? We've been talking all about these soft skills. Oh, God, we need soft skills too, but don't lose sight of expertise, right? And in order to become an expert in anything, you need to know facts. So we're still going to be in business of making sure we produce experts, because if we don't have experts, we use what many refer to as the human in the loop. We lose that human that's checking out all of those outputs that's being put out by generative AI. If we lose that, now we're just, I don't know what we are. That's scary, right? So we need experts. So we're not losing sight of that. But these are becoming increasingly ubiquitous, right? Our students are using it. Not only are they may not even be going to the specified websites like Claude or ChatGPT, but even in their search, right? If you're searching on Google, Gemini is popping up with a response. It's going to be embedded through Apple and Microsoft with their products. So Copilot is using ChatGPT 4. All of your Apple software is also going to be using they're embedded into the system. So there's really no escaping it. If you're assigning, a literature report, in all likelihood, like Copilot is going to integrate this GPT into it already. It's there, right? It's coming. So it's fast too, right? So if we look at, ChatGPT sprints to 1 million users. It occurred in 5 days. It took Netflix almost 3.5 years, Facebook 10 months, Instagram almost 3 months, just like that, right? And that was just its break-off point. Now it's just an exponential growth. They're all using it. All the students in your classroom are using it. How they're using it is what we need to get into. So this is from 2023. So 50% of high school students used ChatGPT to help them with their studies. And so they're taking this skill set and they're using it, but we need to make sure that they're using it to its best ability and then also using it ethically. So how it's kind of being used now, right? So in general, faculty, it's really good if you're a novice user as a colleague, right? Just throw ideas out. Like what would be a good way to teach, or give me some good examples of metaphors that would be acceptable to teach concerning bone welfare issues between conventionally caged hens and cage-free hens. But what will happen is you'll get an output from that, and with that output, you start to build out maybe a nice little assignment, right, that is associated with that. But it's really good to jump and bring ideas together. It's fairly good for, now, God, everybody's going to say, great with that? And you're going to give me this look. You can put student responses in and you get a lot of those common mistakes that you see over and over, right? And sometimes it'll pick out patterns that I don't necessarily see, but the ChatGPT can pull out that then I can comment on, right? So I'm not really using it, I'm using it more to judge style of writing, and I'm using my expertise to comment on what they're actually saying, right? My technical skills, my expertise in poultry to really assess their output. It's good for kind of writing reference letters. I've done that. I play with that. So you don't want it to write the reference letter for you. We don't want it to turn into that, right? So I write out all the aspects of what I think this student's great at, what her strengths are, how she performed in a particular exercise, what was one personal highlight that showed this skill set. I'll put all that in, just kind of typing it out, right? Put it in a ChatGPT for it to format in a more cohesive way, right? That I'm just not naturally skilled at writing. That's kind of how most people are using it, right? To not necessarily as a crutch, but to kind of rephrase their own original ideas. Students are often using it as a study tool. So they use it to create practice problems. So they'll put in information about, what they're learning. And so can you give me 10 questions concerning feed formulation of, or how feed is different, feeding broiler breeders is different than feeding broilers. but it'll pop up 10 questions. Now, how those questions come out, I don't know, but it gives that student something to interact with and kind of quiz them about. They're using it for that. They're using it to kind of create memorization or mnemonic devices that help them with their studies. I've encouraged them to kind of use ChatGPT to bring anecdotal information as to why this, to internalize why knowing this will be important, right? And so to have them create ownership and take ownership of their own learning. That's generally how they're using it now. The reason why I think it's important and why I'm a huge advocate of this is not only because, well, gosh, it's inevitable, it's everywhere, right? And we want to produce future leaders. Right? The best way to produce those future leaders is to make sure they're using the best technology out there to the best of its ability. So I had to start to incorporate it. But also, at UGA, and I know probably at all your campuses, there's a big push to active learning because we know it works. And what we've been hearing for the past hour are all these skills that we want to embed into our students that we think is important and that industry also thinks is important. And the best way to get those skills, practice those skills, harness those skills is through active learning, right? The hard part about active learning is if you tried it, it's coming up with those activities, right? It's the creativity, right? This is where ChatGPT is amazing because it's like a colleague that you can bounce ideas off of and play with to create real meaningful active learning activities that can be incorporated into the classroom, whether that's writing an interesting case study or writing maybe an outline for a debate topic and progress through how that debate should be structured for the students. Like, those are things that would take me forever to write, and I would just get bored, right? But with ChatGPT, I can do those pretty fast, and with my help, my expertise, my life experience as a teacher, I come out with a dead-gum good product in a whole less of time, right? It takes me 3-4 hours to create a really good case study that probably would have taken me on and off 2 weeks to make, right? So it's good for that. And in doing that, we're able to bring those activities that we know are effective into the classroom and use them that much, they're easier to make, they're easier to employ. It just makes your classroom really just a fun. If you've done active learning and you walk into that class knowing you've got a good, how excited are you when you have that, right? As opposed to when you're walking in and you're going to give another lecture on feed restriction methods. That may be cool, right? But if you've got an activity that really demonstrates that and you're ready, you can anticipate the excitement that the students are going to have in their debates and engaging in the material. Oh man, you look forward to going to class, right? I want to love my job. This helps me love my job. So hopefully it'll do the same for you. So I think it's important for that, right? We know active learning is important. We know we need to get there. The hard part is often coming up with those exercises. Another thing that's a little challenging for us in poultry science specifically is getting that information that they need, right, to be applied into the classroom. Because it's hard for us, we don't have a lot of really good textbooks or good, like if you teach biology, they have all these course, learning suites that make it really easy to deliver content outside of the class. It's a little harder for us, right? But with your expertise in ChatGPT's capability of really helping you with creativity and just generating ideas that you can work with, it's way easier to come up with some of these content delivery methods that will work outside the classroom. And that's something that's in development. Maybe I could talk about that a little bit during our workshop. So I started using it when it started becoming popular. I probably wasn't one of the first million users, but I jumped on it, right? I think I told this anecdotally. I mean, when I learned about its capabilities and how widespread it was going to be adopted was when my mother-in-law was using ChatGPT to figure out what type of mixed drinks would be best with these cocktails that we were making at the beach. Like you made a list, like using ChatGPT. Like, if it's a 70-year-old woman and the grandma's using ChatGPT, my students are definitely using this. I need to make sure that they are doing it effectively and efficiently. So I started playing. What can I do with it? And, you know, one thing is rubrics. You have rubrics, right? And sometimes you can't figure out, what have I done wrong with my rubric? Because I keep getting this same mistake over and over. That's one thing ChatGPT is good at, is giving it your things, right? And saying, hey, look, I'm struggling with my students putting improper citations, or I'm struggling with my students always using first word syntax in their science reports, right? And here's my rubric. What can I put in there? Give me some language that I can put in there that may assist with students no longer going down that avenue. So it can do things like that. It's really good at writing case studies. So you give it some information. It can also, it's getting a lot better. This is scary, but it's getting a lot better at generating fake data. Right? So if I want, data for a case study for my students to work with, then I can get it to generate some fake data, right? And then the students have to work with to solve the problem. So it's getting good at even coming up with information to base a case study off of. Great for lesson plans and analogies. Even if you don't want to go down my crazy rabbit hole and you want to stick with your lectures, throw your lectures in there, right? Throw your outline in there. And ask it, prompt it with different questions of, how can I make better connections with the bullet points in this lecture? What is a better way that this can flow? What are some analogies that would be relatable to college students at North Carolina State University, right? And so it can feed you things that you can already implement into already existing stuff. Now, I've gone a little further. Now I went from using it on my end to creating, content that I could give to the students, to now having the students be involved themselves in engaging with the ChatGPT, right? Which ultimately is my goal, to have them get experience and realize the power of this technology. So, first thing is I created like a little standalone teaching assistant. This is easy to do, and you can do it now. The only problem with this is your students have to have a subscription if you do it through ChatGPT for the premium service, because they can't interact with custom bots without it. But they became comfortable with this just because, even though it's working as a token, the only thing that this can really pull from, or it prioritizes its pull, is from all of my lectures and all my lectures notes, right? So they feel a little safer with it in using it. So that's helped, and from that they can generate quiz questions or test questions that come directly from that content. So they think that they have a cheat sheet. I don't care, as long as they are engaging with the content. You can think you're cheating me all you want to, just engage in the content. I created little bots that I have a poster up over there. You can look at it, and you can actually, if you find the poster, take a picture of the QR code and play with the little bots. But I created bots because I wanted students to appreciate other people's perspectives, right? And one thing we always talk about, this is in my introductory course, we talk about vertical integration, and we'll talk often about contentious topics, or we'll have debates that often leads back to some aspect of the vertical integration model. What they often fail to do is take perspectives of different stakeholders in that vertical integration model, right? It's not always consumer driven. You have to think about the farmers. You have to think, why is the CEO doing this? So you have to think of stakeholders such as the CEO, the business leaders. You have to think of the farmers. You have to think of the consumers. You have to think of animal rights activists, environmentalist activists. All of these perspectives often come into decision making. And so I created these bots and assigned them roles so that they can kind of get into the perspective of these different perceptions, right? And how they impact decisions. That was an intro thing, and then I learned that now I can pull from this So anytime we have some kind of problem, if we're dealing like, I don't know, muscle myopathy, and we're talking about muscles, we can go back and we can look at, how are consumers perceiving muscle myopathies? What is the farmer think of muscle myopathies? What are animal rights activists thinking about muscle myopathies, right? So that you can get a perspective of the different stakeholders. I want them to learn how to use it. So prompt competition with that. One of the fun things that I'm playing with that I'm really going to integrate now is I want them to create their own kind of tutor. Right? So create their own tutor, create their own coach. And embedded with that, I'm going to give them instructions because this will teach them how to prompt, right? Because in order to properly prompt, you need to tell that GPT who he is, how he's going to act. You know, you can give it kind of personalities, and what I want is for them to create one that's fun and engaging that they will want to go back to. And therefore, guess what? They're hopefully engaging with that over and over and over and becoming experts. And hey, I got my out-of-class stuff, right? I'm delivering that content. The students are getting it themselves. So it does hallucinate. It's getting better at it. I don't know how. I don't know enough about technology. But it does hallucinate, so it does come up with problems, which is good. It actually, if you play with some of my bots that I have, they say stuff that's not right either. And right now, I'm kind of taking that's a blessing and a curse, right? Because I do want my students to be critical. I want them to be cynical of that output, right? Because I want them to be, they have to learn to become the expert, right? And to know that their expertise is going to have value in this world that is now going to be dominated by these large language models. I don't want them to lose a lot of their abilities. With the calculator, I know it's a bad comparison, but it's one of them. With the calculator, they thought that was going to ruin our ability to do simple arithmetic. I don't know if it did so much. But what we did is we just kind of raised the bar of the type of assessments that we were doing with the use of the calculator. With this, I don't want to lose their ability to brainstorm. And I don't want to crutch their ability to brainstorm and come up with ideas and think, or put their pen to paper or type, right? So going forward, I hope that we as instructors are also going to kind of, when they go out in the real world, they're going to use generative AI to make a lot of their documents and their memorandums. But I want them to practice on their writing in class, right? So now I'm realizing that I'm putting a lot on them in terms of using this generative AI to put out, or to generate good papers, good outputs, but I don't want to lose their ability for, just that first stages of writing of thought synthesis. And so that's kind of with that flipped classroom. That's with that active learning. Now you bring those exercises into the classroom. And so it's a way that you can, I don't want to say, you can leverage generative AI, right? And teach them how to use it, but at the same time, stick to those core principles. And those core principles are going to happen under your watch in the classroom. So I hope that, it's just, if you take anything away from this, just take it, I'm going to go play with ChatGPT and see how I can make some of what I already do a little better, right? And maybe I can see how it would be beneficial for my students to also realize the power that this has. And I'll say, once they realize that, they won't be lazy users as they are now, which is to take whatever that first output is and copy it and paste it into the document. Once they learn of its capabilities, they start to become proficient users of the technology. Cheating, that is the big one. Fortunately, that is going to be hard to catch, right? Right now, if you do have a traditional assignment and they're turning it in, you can run it through Turn It In. It has a pretty horrible false positive rate of 4%. It's very it tends to pick out individuals who English is not their first language as being cheaters often. And simply, if you take it, modify it a little bit, and then run it through another ChatGPT, then it's undetectable. And they already know that, so. All right, so take-home message, that's a bunch of words. Take-home message. I think we need to raise the bar. I think we need to use it, and we need to raise the bar of what our assessments are. We need to expect more from them because there is, right now, this tool out there that's inescapable from the changes it's going to have in our classrooms and in the future of work. All right, go play with it. All right, if you're around here afterwards, I'll show you. And if you have to leave, just write down Ethan Mullock and just Google him. There, he has a website with lots of beautiful prompts that you can just use to kind of learn the language of prompts, but instructor-specific prompts to meet your needs. So anything, just write that name down, and you are on your first step of becoming an expert in this emerging field.